Now that we've got that set up, we will go ahead and get going. We have a great lineup here for you today. We have an employer panel that I'm excited for you to hear from. We like to have a variety of employers that have apprenticeships within their organizations so they can share with you what they do as part of their apprenticeships, why they started their apprenticeship, and how their company and employees are benefiting from it, and also, any advice that they might have for you. So feel free to ask them some questions that you may have about challenges that they may have overcome or things that are on your mind. They're great to provide some technical assistance and lessons learned for themselves. So we're happy to have them here today and appreciate their effort in being able to attend today. We're going to talk a little bit about the state of the economy in Utah, what apprenticeships are. They seem to have been a buzzword for a while, so we like to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about apprenticeships. And then also resources that are available to you to help develop or expand programs and provide technical assistance as well. So again, over the last several years, apprenticeships have been a major topic of discussion. They've been a buzzword not only here in Utah, but nationally. And, that's why we feel like it's really important for us to define what apprenticeships are. And really, they're a training strategy that is used, that is industry driven. It's created with the industry partner directly, not for you, but with you, and really combines the on-the-job learning with the classroom instruction to help prepare this individual to meet your needs and to work for your organization in any given occupation that you're looking at. Apprenticeships are a tried and true effort, a workforce development model that have been around for over 100 years. We've seen a great success from them in the construction area, also manufacturing. But what might be a surprise is we've had some great successes also in IT, healthcare, automotive, transportation. Really, you can find them in any industry. And so that's what we're here to share with you and show how you can see your organization and how you might fit within this workforce development model. Though there are common elements between apprenticeships and internships, we often hear about that term used interchangeably. And so I want to kind of talk about what the differences are and maybe what the similarities might be. But really, apprenticeships, for the most part, or I shouldn't say for the most part, the biggest difference is an apprenticeship is a job. You are actually working for the company. You're hired as an employee. Where an intern, you may or may not be hired. You may just work for them for a small amount of time, a very specific period of time, usually 3 to 6 months. Occasionally we see them a little bit longer. But with an internship, you're also there to learn from the company, maybe see if you're a good fit, maybe see if they're a good fit for you. But it's not always directly related to your training program. And there's really not an expectation that you're going to remain employed there. There's not an expectation by the intern or by the company. They're really looking at, filling a need, and internships are great. They're a great way to, again, see if you're a good fit, but also to learn from those organizations and see if it's someplace that you really want to be. But with an apprenticeship, you're really looking at that expectation that you're going to be hired and stay on that job once you complete your apprenticeship program. Those that participate in apprenticeship programs have a 92% retention rate with their employer upon completion. So that's something that's really great. I think that's something we all wish we could have as a really high retention rate. And we know that those can vary, and it can be for different reasons, but it is nice to know that there are models out there that can help with that. Apprenticeships essentially have 5 criteria that make them a high quality program. Really, these are a paid, structured, on-the-job learning component under a supervised, skilled employee or mentor. There's related or classroom-based instruction. This can be done with our technical schools, community colleges, universities. We also have some employers that provide their own training through either an association or some purchased curriculum that is recognized by their industry and valid for that. And that's something that can be used as well. There's also an ongoing assessment of the students' skills. They're able to prove their competency of the skills that they're learning. And then they receive wage increases that are commensurate with those demonstrated competencies. And then it also culminates in an industry recognized credential and a national certification when you have a registered apprenticeship program from the Department of Labor. So as you can see here, there are some differences, again, between apprenticeships and internships. I often like to describe them for simplicity purposes as internships being a try before you buy model, and apprenticeships being a train to retain, because you're looking to keep those employees, but you are training them to meet the demand that you have and the skill set that you really need for your organization. Our schools do a great job at providing education, but they also have so many employers that they're trying to fill a need for, that when you develop a program, maybe such as composites, you really don't have the ability to tailor specific needs for 12 different employers. You really have to kind of look at the skills that are going to cross the board or the gamut for any employer and what might be transferable. And then there's always going to be a piece that you're going to need to teach them on the job that meets your organization and what you need for that fit. It's just not feasible. And we can't have that expectation on our education partners to really tailor it that well to every single individual employer when they're trying to serve so many and really make it a good program and make it feasible for them to be able to continue that way. So with an apprenticeship, you're able to use these training programs that are going to cross those skills, but also you're able to pair them with a mentor to train them the specifics for your own organization. This also helps the employer to now become a producer of talent rather than just a consumer of talent. They're not just consuming what's being provided by our educational providers, but they're helping to drive their workforce with the needs that they have internally. This slide shows us kind of information about apprenticeships on a national front. We can see that there's been a 70% growth rate over the last 10 years. We can see what the annual income is for the average apprentice, and also again that 92% retention rate. By way of comparison, this is a graphic from the annual apprenticeship report that gets provided to the legislature back in October. Since then, we have increased even more, but this gives you a picture of what it was over our last fiscal year. You can see in Utah that our average age for apprentices is 25 to 34, but we've also seen a 25% increase in youth apprentices ages 16 to 24 over the last year on a national front. And we know that there's some major efforts in Utah to increase youth apprenticeships here as well. But as you can see, we are well on our way in the 18 to 24 category. We're just looking at opportunities to where we can allow students to start in high school where they may be 17 before they graduate. And so we'll see some efforts continuing on here on that front. Now we're going to talk about the benefits of the return on investment. Why would an employer want to do apprenticeship programs for their company as a workforce development and a recruitment tool? Well, first of all, Utah's unemployment rate is 2.1%. That's pretty low. We also have a 4.5% employment growth rate. Our new statistics just came out last week, and all of Utah's 10 major private sector industry groups posted a net year-over job gain. So that's great. We can see that we're growing, but we're also growing at a very high rate within all industries, and we're all competing for talent. And so this is one reason that we need to look at different opportunities to fill some of our most critical positions. I kind of mentioned that this could be used as a recruitment tool when you're looking to hire employees. One of the things that we have found is that studies show that the first ones that are usually out of the workplace during economic hardships are some of our hardest to serve populations or disadvantaged from our disadvantaged communities. And they're also the last ones back into the workplace. That often is because they need to change their skill set, upskill, reskill into a different industry. And so this is a great opportunity to provide to those groups. But it can also be used for your current workforce, those that maybe on your front line that you might think, you know, this individual is a rock star. I could see him going places here within our organization if he just had this other skill set or this certification, or if we could give him some leadership training. All of these things can be a part of an apprenticeship program for your incumbent workforce, them up the career ladder to fill some of those other harder to fill positions that maybe you have, and then opening up those entry-level positions for other opportunities. So you can see that you can use it for both. You can customize your training, you reduce your turnover because you're retaining your workers. Steve, when he talks, you'll hear about the results that they've had on the diversity front and being able to hire individuals in the IT sector. And so we're excited to hear a little bit about that. And of course, all of these things, when they work really well, impact your bottom line. And that's what's most important, right? As a business organization, if you're not having positive net growth, you're out of business. So not that our workers are not important, but that just shows that they are a key component to being able to help your business be sustainable and continue to grow. When we look at return on investment in terms of dollars, we've seen some studies that have shown that for every dollar spent on an apprenticeship, an employer gains $1.50 through increased productivity, reduced waste, and greater frontline innovation. Overall, the return on investment, it really depends on what you put into it from your company's perspective and what you put into your apprenticeship company program. According to Nicholas Wyman, the CEO of the Institute of Workplace Skills and Innovation, he indicated that employers can earn a 36% return on investment in apprenticeship training, which is higher than any investment a company can earn on its capital and far higher than the 10% typical among S&P 500 firms. So I just like to share some of those because, you know, it can be some work to develop and implement your program, but you can see that there is a return on your investment and ways that you'll be able to see that. Let's see here. I just want to make sure I covered on some of these key points. I've jumped around a little bit. Probably one other thing I'd like to point out is a lot of our companies offer tuition reimbursement programs. Oftentimes, these tuition reimbursement programs are for workers that have been with your organization for a year or longer. One of the things I'd like you to consider is taking just a portion, just a little bit of that money that you already have aside for tuition reimbursement and redirect it for apprenticeships for these newer employees that are coming into your company, because when you're offsetting those training costs, it makes it easier for them to balance their work needs and their home life and their expenses. But it's also a good return on investment because you know that the training that you're putting them into is directly related to the job that they're performing for you right now, or the job that you may be building them for to go into later. And so that's something that we've been trying to encourage more employers to do that we know have these funds that they use anyway. So now I want to introduce you to our panel. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see them a little better. With me today, I have Stacy Palacios from the Utah Transit Authority. I also have Steve King. He is with Apprentice and also the Utah Tech Apprenticeship Program and has been doing that here. And I'm not seeing him, but I'm hopeful that we are going to have Levi Velasquez join us as well. So Stacy, why don't we start with you? If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about your role within UTA. Give us kind of some history or background on UTA's apprenticeship program, and then we'll go from there.
You bet. So my name is Stacy Palacios. I am the manager of training and development with Utah Transit Authority, and we'll just shorten that to UTA. And I've been with the company for 18 years, completely an accidental situation. I was like 5 years and out, but I just happened to fall in love with this company and what we do. And so this will be probably where I retire. And I think that's a huge impact for what I do, which is administer apprenticeship programs for UTA. UTA back in the late 90s saw that there was a shift in technology. At the time, our major fleet was buses, and things were starting to become a lot more technical. And so they really had to look at how can we upscale our current staff to meet the needs of these changing technologies. And so they found apprenticeship really fit that model of what we were looking for. And it was really what can we do for our internal employees? But what they found was such a success with the program that we've continued it on. So our program originally started in 1998 and is still going strong. And we've expanded our programs. So we do have our bus transit specific program, but we also do a body shop apprenticeship program. We have facilities programs for facility mechanics. And then we're currently in the process of expanding even more into our rail side of the organization. So we're currently building 3 new apprenticeship programs for our light rail vehicles, our heavy rail or commuter rail trains, and then along with our maintenance of way group, which are the ones who maintain all of the tracks and signals. What we found at UTA is this model has worked so well for us in the way of retaining employees and making sure that we have that skill set. And we have a little bit of an older group of employees. We feel like statistically we should have about a 22% turnover in retirements within the next 3 years. And so this has been a model that has also helped us plan for those kind of retirements. It can't be something, that you have, I have somebody quitting tomorrow and I need to fill that gap. It takes a little bit of a crystal ball kind of situation where you have to really kind of look down the road and say, what's my average turnover? What's my retirement rates looking like? And that's how we can kind of forecast how many apprentices we're going to need in the program. But it's really been such a benefit at UTA because statistically, I think Melissa said 92% nationally retention rate. Ours is probably around 97%. We don't lose employees. Once we get them through our apprenticeship programs, they really stay here. I have people on my staff who've been at UTA for 40 years. And so it is just this, we're able to maintain staffing that I think a lot of companies are jealous of because it's just not something that we deal with. But it's also given us this opportunity not only to look at how do we get our, we focus a lot on apprenticeship, but then it's given us this opportunity to say, well, how do we even grow up into apprenticeship? How do we create these career ladders for individuals who maybe don't even have the skill set to qualify for apprenticeship? So it's really even broadened our perspective as far as what we can do at UTA is for our employees. I think the one thing I would also add into this is the cultural benefits. Our employees are invested in UTA because UTA invested in them. Okay, I think I'm done.
That is perfect. I love that statement. Your employees are invested in you because you invested in them. And I think that's really important. That's something that we have seen in some other recent studies through HR and on LinkedIn, that employees are looking for meaning and they want to know that what they're doing is beneficial to their organization, to their community. And I think that speaks to that. So thank you. I appreciate that, Stacy. We'll turn the time over now to Steve King. Steve, if you'll introduce yourself, the organization. You have a little bit of a different program that you are managing. And so I think this really is good too, because this helps us to see that there are many different ways to have registered apprenticeship programs. It's not a one size fits all. We have organizations that have their programs directly registered with the Department of Labor, and others that serve as intermediaries and act as that sponsor of record. And so, Steve, I'll turn the time over to you and let you talk about the program that you manage here.
Great, thank you, and good morning, everyone. As Melissa said, I'm Steve King. I'm with an organization called Apprentices. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment, but I'm also directly associated with the Utah Technology Apprenticeship Program, which is a grant that the state has been awarded that is administered by Weber State, and the whole idea is to increase tech apprenticeship within the state. So as Melissa mentioned, there are these different types of programs which are called intermediaries or sponsors, and to give you a little bit of history, because I think it's good to have that perspective. A few years ago in the state of Washington, there is a organization there called the Washington Technology Industry Association, very similar to Silicon Slopes here in Utah. And their members were getting together and saying, hey, we have a problem. We don't have enough people getting into tech. We are looking at the future, we're looking at the moment, and the traditional ways of people coming out of college, there's just not enough people graduating to meet the needs of tech, and everyone kind of looks the same. And so we need to figure out a way to make it look a little bit different, and need to get access to more people and be able to have a process to have people come into our organizations that can do there. And so as they started to look at different roles, they realized that, hey, not everyone needs to have a college degree to be successful in this role. And with the right kind of training and the right kind of on-the-job learning, a person can become a cybersecurity analyst or a software developer or a business analyst or whatever the role would be. And as they were looking at this, they kind of said, this seems like a model that makes sense. Where in the world is this going on? And is anything like this happening? And it just happened that in Europe, this was going on. They were looking at roles that were not the typical skilled roles that you normally think of as apprenticeship. They were into technology, into healthcare. They were into all sorts of different roles and making that happen. So they decided that they would create an organization, which became Apprentices, and Apprentices would help them create and administer this for their organizations to create pathways for people to get into the roles. And soon thereafter, the Department of Labor awarded a status to Apprentices to not only do this in the state of Washington, but to do it throughout the United States. And the state of Utah decided to sponsor Apprentices here in the state. And along came the grant, and we got tied together, and that's how we're working together. So in our role as an intermediary and sponsor, it's a little bit different than your own program in the sense that you don't have to start from scratch and figure out how to actually you want to create the program. We've determined what the role and process would be, and then we work with you to determine what kind of training you would like the individuals to do. But for an organization, their lift is basically deciding on who they would like to bring in, and then our part of that is working with all the different pieces of this puzzle to get you the right people in the door for you, and then to help you throughout that process of apprenticeship, make sure that the reports are getting done, that the people are progressing, that they're meeting what they need to, and at the end, they're getting the certification that, hey, they did become a software developer, they did become a cybersecurity analyst, and they're recognized as doing such. And so that's our role. And I'm a business developer here in the state, working with organizations to make that all happen. Back to you.
Great, thank you, Steve. I was looking for my unmute button. I'm sure we hear that on every webinar, right? So check the box for that one. Why don't Stacy or Steve, both of you, think about and share with us maybe how you recruit for apprentices. I know that's one area that people have a question on. Great, I have a program, now what do I do? Where you find them. So, Steve, since you're still here, why don't we start with you, and then Stacy will move to you.
Yeah, so thank you. Part of what we're doing is we work with all sorts of organizations to get the word out that there are opportunities in apprenticeship. So community groups, especially groups that are focused more on maybe those more people of color, more women, veterans, people with disabilities. We're specifically tied into those individuals to let them know. We also have a great referral program from internal. We're doing recruitment both in the state and throughout the United States. And we don't seem to have a problem bringing people to the program and who are interested to do this. It's always needing more employers to be able to find the places to have them come. But one of the things that Melissa earlier mentioned that I think's relevant is that, as I said in my initial comments, you think about tech and you think about who those people normally are, they kind of look the same. And one thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that there's a diversity in that, and not only for the reason of diversity, just for the fact that there are only so many of the one group of peoples, and we need to have everybody participating to meet the needs there. So I'm happy to say that at least in our organization, about 80% of the people that get placed hit one of those check marks. And we're always looking to increase that and make that more available for everyone inside the infrastructure of tech.
Thank you, Steve. And there was a question in the chat about how to get in contact with you. So Alexi is going to put your contact information in the chat.
Thank you.
Stacy?
Yeah, so I think UTA goes about our recruitment in a pretty similar fashion. We have a lot of networking that we have done, a lot with the different tech schools that have, programs that are very, similar to what we provide. But I think UTA's went about it in a really different way than I think a lot of apprenticeships do. We actually try to do a lot of our recruitment into some of our lower classifications, and then we build up. So we've definitely created this career ladder of opportunities for individuals. And so we're really going out and trying to find those who have an interest, who may not even have any skill sets there, and provide them those opportunities to advance themselves through the company. And so it's very rare that I actually hire apprentices off the street. And so it's a unique situation where we have a lot of programs. We do probably the same thing. We're at high schools and we're at, technical colleges and we're at fairs and all that kind of stuff. But we're really looking for just those who might have an interest and really providing that skill set to build them up to an apprentice. And I think that also has helped us in developing our really retention rates at UTA. We definitely like this grow your own model. That really worked well for us.
That's great. And I love seeing the different, again, variety of how it's used. We do see a lot of employers that will hire, they'll post a job, a regular job opening, and then hire someone, and that person may work for them for approximately 90 days. Before they put them in their program, just because they want to make sure, again, that they're a right fit for that company. In my perfect world, we would see this progression where in 7th and 8th grade, they're learning about these careers, they're having opportunities to participate in career fairs, have employers go and visit their classrooms, provide some projects that they can work on, and then go into the job shadow, go into industry tours in 9th grade. And then maybe in 10th grade, they're starting some of their CTE classes. They're doing some internships so that by the time they're a senior, they can actually start some of these apprenticeship programs and they know that's where they want to be because they've had all these other experiences. You know, we have a lot of kids in Utah. That's a plus for us where we continue to grow. But a lot of our kids, you know, they're kids, and they should be kids. But it is fun when you see them make connections to companies that are in their own backyard that they didn't know that that's what they do. And to kind of see them light up when they find out, you know, I had an experience with my son. He's 14 now, but I took him to a STEM career fair when he was about 6 or 7. He likes rockets. Those are cool. At the time, it was ATK, now Northrop Grumman, but he didn't know who they were or what they did. But they helped him build a rocket. He got to shoot it at this career fair. From that point forward, he knew who this company was and what they do. And so it's kind of planting seeds earlier on as we bring that down. But it also, I think, just helps people better prepare for careers because they know what opportunities are out there. They've heard about them. So I'd like to see even a little more of that. But honestly, even with our adult populations, you know, sometimes they don't know what some of these occupations are. Or we have a good group of refugees. We are a welcoming state where we welcome them here. And so showing them opportunities maybe through some career development and maybe even some internships that might lead to that apprenticeship for individuals that are looking to explore because they don't know what they want to do now that they're here. So, you know, we can definitely find ourselves in being able to connect to our education providers and providing opportunities to students and adults at all ages, I think. What are some of the challenges were there challenges that presented themselves during COVID? Was there anything that you needed to do differently? Is there anything that you learned from that you're going to continue doing? How did that impact your apprenticeship programs?
Steve, if you don't mind, I'll jump in here. So we're one of the apprenticeship programs where we provide most of our training in-house. So we have a training department that does almost all of the training. When COVID hit, it really made us sit back and think about how do we actually provide this level of hands-on training when we can't have people in the same room together, right? And so we really had to get creative we never stopped coming to work. Our mechanics and our technicians, they still had to be at work, you know, our drivers, everybody had to still be at work. And so we really had to stop and think, how can we do this in just the safest way possible? And so what we did is a little bit more of a hybrid approach to things where we have a mentorship program and we have also shop instructors that we have. And so what we did is actually utilize them more to really have them be at the shops getting instruction, but then being able to do, instead of a classroom setting, it more all hands on the floor. And so it really changed this model of, instead of sitting in a classroom for maybe an 8-hour day, or, you know, breaking up between your practical and then going out and doing the hands-on applications, it became more of a hands-on application and a little bit of classroom. And so it was a unique situation, and I actually think it really went well to really spread out our technicians into the shop environment, because they got more one-on-one attention than they would in a classroom setting. And so I think it was actually beneficial. And what we've done is now we've brought people back into the classroom, but we've also brought in mentors and shop instructors so that we actually have more help when we're doing hands-on exercises, so people are actually getting more assistance. So I think that was probably one of the biggest takeaways we had from COVID.
That's great. Steve?
You know, it's interesting being in the tech world. Everything has changed from COVID. It used to be that everyone was all sitting in the same building doing the same thing, and now no one sits anywhere at the same place, and everyone seems to be all over the place. And the same thing happened with us. When it first happened, just like everybody else, the training had to go virtual. And you think about the person who's maybe learning some of those initial skills and not having somebody right there in a classroom where you can ask them for help immediately is a little bit unusual. However, then we found that being able to do instant messaging, being in a virtual classroom, doing like what we're doing became very quickly the way of doing it. And so it actually opened up some doors, both for the ability to get other training partners involved where we may not have been able to have done that before, which has actually been financially beneficial for the organizations. But it also made it so when they were learning, it became more in line with what they were going to do after the fact. So instead of, it's not only the learning factor being virtual, but then they were actually working virtual. So they learned how to do both in that scenario. And it's worked out to be a good thing. Some of the downsides to that though, it's that where we really care about making sure that we're building people in Utah, this flexibility of being able to do this has made it so organizations can get talent anywhere. And so on one hand, that's a good thing, but on the other hand, that probably hasn't helped us perfectly in the sense of just growing our own group of individuals. So, you know, good and bad as far as that goes, but it's all how things get worked out. But I think as far as one other thing that was tricky is people sometimes look at apprenticeship as very complicated and a very big lift. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute. But because of COVID, everyone kind of went into this react mode that, oh, we can't do anything that's unique during this time. We have to just do everything we have to be able to pay more for the, we'll pay more, we'll do more, we'll do whatever we need to make things happen, but we don't want to do anything that's complicated. And so some of the adoption during that time went down, but I'm happy to report that that's actually improved the other way too.
That's great. You know, I agree with you. It's hard when we're trying to grow our own in Utah. One of the benefits that I have seen, though, is that we have been able to reach more rural individuals, and they've been participating more where, you know, we talk about connecting to rural, we talk about, you know, companies off the Wasatch Front, providing them jobs. So although, you know, we can get talent from anywhere, there's other employers that are also looking at Utah for talent in our rural areas. So they may not be working for a Utah company, but we're still able to participate in this apprenticeship program. But being IT and being remote, just it provided them some opportunities that I think that, you know, we had tried to get there and just hadn't quite gotten there yet. And this has kind of opened that door up a little bit more. I know you've done some work with tech moms as well, and connecting to them and providing opportunities for either single or married mothers that are opting to stay home but still have a skill set they'd like to use, and being able to work from home some as well. So it's been exciting to see some of those things.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of add one thing on that. That is what you just stated is a really important part about the change too, in that most organizations are less 8 to 5 now, which allows some flexibility to do those type of things that you mentioned also. And that has allowed more people to be participating than would have maybe been able to prior. And the lack of having to travel has actually been great as far as people's ability and flexibility to do that. You know, of course, their boss moved to Florida because that sounded better than they were when they were local, but that still doesn't really matter because they can still get the work done.
Yeah, good point. So now think about advice. Are there any barriers or challenges that you had, or things that you want someone to think about as they're developing a program? Not that would completely scare them off, but to let them know that, you know, there could be some challenges, but there's ways to overcome them, to not let the challenge scare them off, to kind of embrace it and see, you know, where they might go, or to just see that we have a group of mentors here and people that will help walk them through this.
I'll go first, Stacy. So I think one of the things that when people think of the word apprenticeship, it just sounds complicated. And it can be, in the sense of some of the things that might have to go about that. And maybe in a second, I'll share a little bit about what some of those complicated things are. But I've actually come to the conclusion that that if people really look at it as a talent acquisition process, it becomes a whole lot less complicated when they're looking at they're bringing on talent than they're looking at creating some kind of program that develops talent. And what I mean by that is, you think about anybody who comes into an organization, they have probably, no matter who they are, they need to be taught and mentored on how to actually work inside the organization they're coming to. So even the most skilled individual needs some time to get up to speed on how to actually work inside that organization. And obviously, if a company starts thinking of it as, I need to invest in this person who's coming in to help them get up to speed and learn what they need to know, that changes the dynamic when they start thinking of it that way, versus like, I got to create this program that brings people in and make all that happen. In the tech world especially, a lot of companies are really used to internships. That's very common in our world. But internships is a lot of work. You know, you have to do this interviewing, you have to figure out these special projects for them to do. You have to figure out how you're going to watch it, how you're going to watch them and do that. And it is complicated. And an apprenticeship should be different than that. They should be coming in and doing the work that they are, other people are doing. So it shouldn't have to be something special. It can be something just right in line with what happens. And so thinking of it as, I'm hiring a cybersecurity analyst, and this is just how I bring them in, makes a whole lot more sense than saying, oh, I got to create a program, I got to figure out what the training's going to be, I've got to do all these different things, so I might get a few cybersecurity analysts in here. In our world, the organizations that have made it a hiring process versus a special type of process have made it so much simpler and better for their organizations than anything else in relation to that. That stated, there are some differences. You know, most companies don't necessarily have inside either their talent acquisition pool or process to have an apprentice be part of their salaried group or part of their banding. So they may have to do some changes in their HR that's not similar to what they're used to before. If they've done internships before, they may actually have some of that work already done. But the idea that, hey, I normally hire somebody and I pay them $60,000 a year, and as an apprentice, they can get what's called a learning wage, where they actually get paid at a lower amount as they increase their knowledge, they step up, with the idea that they'll get to the $60,000. Well, again, some organizations, they have to figure out how to do the banding and make that happen. Also, we really emphasize the fact you don't have to have a college degree to get into apprenticeship. And so many organizations have that as a standard as far as their job descriptions go. So the fundamental changing of how they maybe are okay with their hiring has to go through that. So I'm not trying to say it's complicated, but there are some things that are different that have to occur to bring on non-traditional talent versus the traditional talent that people bring on. So those are some of the things, some of the main things that I see in here. But again, my walkaway is that if an organization thinks of it as, I'm acquiring talent and this is just how I'm doing it, it sure makes it a lot easier than feeling like I have to create some big program I got to work on.
That is a really good point, Steve. I'm glad you brought that out. We've learned about this a lot over the past couple of years of when we're speaking to businesses, we need to speak business to business and talk. And Alexi and I talk a lot of government. You know, I have Pat Miller on here. We all talk a lot of government, and it makes perfect sense to us because that's our world. But you're right on in this being a talent acquisition process. And so what I've tried to talk to employers about is you recruit, you onboard, you train, you have a career ladder, you give promotions, you honor, if you will, for lack of a better term, certifications and value those and help people move up. All those things are what we talked about as being high quality components of a registered apprenticeship program. And those are all regular things that the employer does already. We just talk about them differently or use the government terms for it rather than just emphasizing how that really is their business process. And what you do when you have an apprenticeship program, if you will, or process, you're still using your process, but now you've just aligned it and implemented it, and now you have it in standardized for repeatable results so that you can, you know what your expectations are, you know what you're going to get out of it each time. So very good points. Thank you, Steve. Stacy?
Thanks. So I think lessons learned in regards to our model and what I would help kind of, I think I touched on this before, is apprenticeship isn't like you're recruiting off the street and you're going to have somebody come in with the skill set you need to perform at that level today. It's a time intensive program. And so you're basically needing to be able to understand, I'm investing in these people, and in 3 years, I'm going to see that result. So I think there's this upfront investment in these people, in these individuals, to really get you where you want them to be down the road. And I think that's sometimes a harder thing for businesses to think about, because a lot of changing your mindset and going down the road of apprenticeship is different than being able to put a job posting out and hire somebody off the street who has all these skill sets already. It's a different mentality. And so I think that's one of the things I would just, if you're going into apprenticeship, you have to really think about that. And you're building someone up to be that person you want them to be, to have those skills that you're going to need in the business. The other thing I would say is, it is a lot of investment up front. As far as, if you're going to go down the route of apprenticeship, UTA teaches most of our apprenticeship in-house. However, we do also have hybrid programs where we contract with some of the local colleges to provide some of those courses to augment what we do. So I think, looking at this, what is the right appropriate model for your business based on the needs of your program and what you're trying to accomplish, and be flexible and be willing to really research what's out there. Is it something you have to do in-house, or is there something out there that could also benefit, to partnering and things like that? And so I think it's this, traditional apprenticeship thinking that I would say, we originated in, but we've since learned that that doesn't have to be the way it always is. And so the lessons learned of, think about it in a way of, is there something else out there that we could also utilize to help us with these programs? I think that's probably some of our biggest struggles is, just thinking about it in terms of just because we've done it this way, does that mean I always have to do it this way? And being able to change a program, even though it's been in 20 plus years of existence. So, flexibility and is going to be key to any kind of program you guys build in-house.
Well, those are all really good points and really great advice. And I think it's also a really good segue into the next portion of our webinar today. We also have Alexia Murphy here that's going to talk about the resources that are available to you to develop and expand your programs. Please know that we still have the chat open for those that want to ask questions, but then when Alexia is done, we'll open it up and we can talk more and learn about other questions that you guys might have for anyone in the group.
Thanks, Melissa. My name's Alexia Murphy, and I am a program specialist specific to apprenticeship with the Department of Workforce Services. And I just want to share with you some of the resources that are available to help you when you're developing your apprenticeship program. Sorry, I have allergies. The first thing that I wanted to let you know is on our apprenticeship website, which is apprenticeship.utah.gov. Lisa can put that in the chat, but you can also see it across the slide as well, or across the top of Melissa's head. there is a Utah Apprenticeship Playbook, and that's a really great resource. It includes information on the components of apprenticeship, so some of the things that Melissa talked about, key partnerships and delivery methods, and then it gives you some resources to connect to apprentices, a mentoring guide, FAQ. It's almost like everything you kind of need to know for an apprenticeship program. You can also work with me. I can assist you in going through those initial steps and knowing your components. I work very closely with Pat Miller at the Office of Apprenticeship, and who will ultimately approve your program. So that's something that I can help you with and facilitate. If you're interested in some more support or even just getting some questions answered, you're welcome to reach out to us at apprenticeship@utah.gov. Melissa can put that in the chat as well. There is some funding that can be available to offset the cost of education. Through the Department of Workforce Services, we have career and education funding. That is available to eligible apprentices. These programs are needs-based programs, so they're geared towards individuals who are either low income or recently laid off. If the apprentice is eligible for these funds, they can be used towards training costs, so tuition, supplies, books, or on-the-job training funds. On-the-job training funds reimburse the employer, so not the actual apprentice. This goes to the employer for half of the individual's wages to help offset the cost of training that individual. You can also connect with any of your local schools that you might be partnering with anyways to talk about custom fit or other funding that they might have available through the school. And we are in a world of apprenticeship grants. There's a whole slew of them going in the state, and there's many more that keep coming out. So Workforce Services does have an apprenticeship grant. Unfortunately, that is winding down. It ends in June. But there are other opportunities as well within the state. Steve talked about the Utah Tech Apprenticeship Program. They have a grant associated with them that was received by Weber State. Southern Utah University also has a grant for cybersecurity specific to green energy and manufacturing. That particular grant was actually to design the program, but both Weber State and Southern Utah are looking for employers to partner with. So that is definitely something we can connect you to either through Steve, whose information is in the chat, or by reaching out to the apprenticeship email, and we can get you in touch with the right person. There's also some funding available through the Talent Ready Apprenticeship Connection or TRACK program. This is through the Talent Ready office, and they received $2 million in one-time funding through the legislature this year. Generally, those funds are going to go towards the educational institutions. So they will be also looking for employers to partner with for those programs. Melissa, is there anything you would like to add, or maybe talk about the upcoming grant that was recently released?
Sure. I made a couple notes here, actually. There are new funding opportunities available through our federal partners all the time. So whether it be Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, the EDA, education, there's always funding out there for education training that usually will have a registered apprenticeship component as a part of it as being an allowable expense. So two things that are more recent, one of them being the Apprenticeship Building America opportunity. This is a new Department of Labor grant funding announcement that was released recently, and proposals are due April 25th. We know that there are quite a number of partners in the state of Utah that are looking at applying. There's 4 different categories that can be applied for. And there's a broad range of groups that are eligible to apply for these grants. In the past, it was usually, your state workforce agency or your local education institutions like the tech colleges, community colleges, and universities. But this one is even opened up to industry associations, to municipalities, to cities, to nonprofit organizations, labor management groups, unions. This one's pretty broad. They're really, really looking at how you align youth apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships that will lead you to full registered apprenticeship programs, and then also some hubs, if you will, or intermediaries that help design and promote programs. So there's lots of different groups that are looking to apply for these here in Utah as individual grants or partnered grants, and some even with other states and some nationally. So I think that just speaks to the support that we have from a federal level to continue to grow apprenticeship programs and opportunities, and even opportunities that lead up to that through pre-apprenticeships and youth apprenticeships. And then also through the new Infrastructure Jobs Act, there are some funding streams that are formula allocated to our transportation divisions and various departments that they have changed to allow them to include apprenticeship opportunities as a workforce development component to help build those roads and bridges and all the infrastructure that we need moving forward. So we're going to see some movement in that area in our state as well. That's going to provide more opportunities. So if you happen to have a business that aligns with that or does work for UDOT or UTA or is aligned somehow, then there may be some opportunities there. And then still, here in our state, I think our state has shown its support for registered apprenticeship programs by developing and creating the position of a Commissioner of Apprenticeship Programs. I was appointed as the state's first Commissioner of Apprenticeships in August of 2019. My role is a supportive role to our education partners and our industry partners to collaborate and connect and be able to help find the right partners or connect to the right partners for various apprenticeship activities, and then also make recommendations to the legislature on what they can do to help support, improve, and expand registered apprenticeship programs. So I share that with you just so that you can see that there is a lot of support for apprenticeship efforts in the state, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more. And I think that's exciting. There's just lots of opportunities here and resources. It's not just, hey, we want you to think about apprenticeships as a process, a recruitment process, or a talent development process, but we're also going to give you some support that you need to help develop those to be successful. And so I think that's great. I think we're going to continue to see more of that, and we'll always be looking for more partners. Looks like maybe we have some questions coming into the chat. Are we getting those answered, Lex, or should we ask those of our panelists?
I'm on it.
Great. Well, we do still have a little bit of time. We kind of breezed through some things today, but that's okay. I like to make sure that we have enough time to also allow our participants to ask questions or bring things up that may be of concern, or maybe that we haven't thought of, or something that's on your mind. So I'll just kind of open it up. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or also raise your hand so that we can call on you. Looks like JP Smith has a question.
Yes, it's actually Jeanette. Hi, Melissa.
If I'd have looked at the picture, I would have known exactly who it was.
I know, right? Hi, Stacy. Hey, David. So a lot of you guys that I know. I did want to make one mention. I mean, the technical colleges, we have worked with a lot of the companies, and we have the formal apprenticeship programs that are registered, but we also do customized courses. We have some machining industries up in Ogden, and they put together a specialized course through our program, and it's the same setup. They go through these courses as they're in the college, they're working, they're getting promotions, and in the end, they do get some certificates as they go along. So there are, like David had asked, hi, David, do they all have to be formal? It is nice to have the formal, it's quality. We do have those as well in electrical and our plumbing, but not all of them, but apprenticeships do work. They're very important. I highly recommend them to all companies, however you can get those started. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jeanette. It's always nice to hear and know about the resources that are available to them, so we appreciate that. Anyone else? Wesley.
So I'm over with Utah Valley University, and I'm just wondering, from an education standpoint, what are ways that educational facilities can be involved in the apprenticeship program? From my interaction with it, and I am still new, but it seems like we would probably feel more of like a marketing and like push to employers that we might have contact with through apprenticeships. Through internships. But is there another role that either business owners, Stacy, like you talked about with UTA, Steve, I know we worked together before, but like, what are ways that educational facilities could be involved? Like, what should be approaches that we should be considering to strengthen the apprenticeship program?
That is a great question. So there are a lot of different roles that an education institution can provide. One of them is you can be the education partner for any given apprenticeship program that aligns with programs that you have. We do see most of our apprenticeship programs that in one way, shape, or form connect to our local public education providers, post-secondary education providers. So you'll hear us talk about it as the RTI, or the related training instruction for that given occupation. That's one role. I like that you have the suggestion that employers that you work regularly with that already offer internships, having them consider adding an apprenticeship component to the way that they partner with you. That might just be something they hadn't thought of before. So I think that's another way in promoting those. Another avenue that's available to our education providers, and we do have a few of these in the state, is that you can serve as what we call an intermediary role, where we do have some employers that would like to participate in a registered apprenticeship program, but they don't necessarily want to do their own apprenticeship. They may want someone that takes on what they may see as a burden of tracking apprentices, because you have your program registered and then you track them through their program. But that's something an education provider already does. You already know who's enrolled in your classes, you know if they're progressing, you know when they complete, you know what certifications they get, and and then when they're employed. So if you're having that employment component up front, you already know that, and you're following that through. And so that's one thing that you can do. The University of Utah, they are a registered apprenticeship sponsor or an intermediary for behavioral health. So they work with a lot of nonprofit organizations, state agencies, some smaller entities that may not have the capacity to have their own program. And so they are serving as that sponsor for that. SUU is also doing that for employers in IT and manufacturing and those that have some of those cybersecurity needs. USU is also doing the same. And then I think Pat put in the chat that you also have a registered apprenticeship program within your entity. So we see a lot of our education providers that hire their own apprentices a lot of times in the facilities management area, but there's other areas too. One of the things that Steve and I have talked about is we have IT needs all over the state, even within our own organizations, education being one of them. So finding out who those right people are that maybe we could connect them to say, hey, we've got apprenticeships in facilities, but we have a lot of IT needs. Maybe we should start our own apprenticeship in IT or connect to the Utah Tech apprenticeship program. So there's several different ways I think that an education provider can have a role in apprenticeships.
I think one other thing to add to that is one of the things that everyone just assumes, but hey, your students, this is a pathway for them to learn also. So they also are really great to be apprenticeship candidates to go into this type of thing too. So schools offer the whole realm of that can be possibly used in this world. So
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Steve, because I kept thinking, I know I'm forgetting something. and the thing that I love about some of these programs that we're seeing with our universities is it isn't something that was regularly done. Apprenticeships were always looked at as that belongs at the tech school or the community college level. And now we're seeing how apprenticeships can be used as a completion strategy. You know, in Utah, the non-traditional student is now the traditional student. These are adults. They may have a family. We see people leave education all the time. Usually it's because of expenses, whether they've gotten married or had a family or had a medical emergency or, you know, become the caretaker, they've had to have a job. And so they just haven't figured out, how can I have a job and be going to school at the same time? Well, through an apprenticeship, they can. And that might be a way that we can help some of our students stay in their programs by connecting them. It is also the only guaranteed way that I know that you can have a job in your field of study directly related. I mean, how many people have gone to college and they've never used their degree or they've never gotten a job that's directly related to that? And this is one way that you can do that. We've seen apprenticeships be offered as certificate type programs or on the non-credit side, but we're also starting to see them embedded in degree programs as well to help keep them on. David?
Hi, this is a great information. Does an apprenticeship need to have a guarantee of a job afterwards?
Usually when you hire someone, you're hiring them to work for you. And so we're hoping that you're going to put them in a position that they're going to remain employed with your company. There are some that are in maybe some group type programs that they don't necessarily stay with your organization, but there are other organizations within that group that they can then move to, because the whole idea behind an apprenticeship is to train them to become what we call a journey level worker or someone that's going to remain successful. Now, if there's someone that just isn't cutting it, there are some issues. We don't expect that you're going to keep them. This is a right to work state. It's always going to continue to be that way. One of the things that we do like to do is we do try to help problem solve. You know, is there something that could be done differently by the individual? Is there something that could be done different by the employer? And we try to help, you know, walk through some of that. And we ask that you look at it that way. But, you know, hey, if someone's embezzling, we're not going to tell you, you've got to keep them. You hired them on as an apprentice, so you're required to keep them on. That's not that level of expectation. But because it is employment, you know, that is the hope that they are going to continue to remain employed with your business.
Okay, so the idea that I've been toying with may not be appropriate for an apprenticeship, but I'll share this idea anyways, is we have a number of positions. And by the way, I'm with Lehigh City, so public sector, public works. We have a lot of need in, you know, parks maintenance, but they tend to feed into street maintenance and feed into water operators, so heavy equipment operators. But we'd like to create a program where we can give students, or not even just students, but individuals who are interested in trying that career out or learning about that career. And then as our full-time positions become available, that's the cohort that we want to pick from. but there's no guarantee that we're going to have full-time openings. Just depends on the rest of what's happening in the departments. So from the beginning, maybe that's more of an internship, but more of an apprenticeship. I don't know, asking this panel and your experience, what are your thoughts?
That's a good question. I think we can think about that a little bit more and talk even more offline, but I can see how there can be room for both. What could happen is that there could be what we like to call a pre-apprenticeship. When we have a pre-apprenticeship, these are things that they can be learning that's going to lead them to that job, right? And what we like to see is pre-apprenticeships that align with a true apprenticeship program or a true apprenticeship. And so in that pre-coursework, they could be learning these different jobs that you're talking about, learning some of the skill sets. You could also look at if there's any training that's directly related to that, that's going to help them be successful in that next job. And then when you align that pre-apprenticeship to your apprenticeship, you as the employer can also opt to accept credit for prior learning, if you will. So they already performed a number of hours on the job that can count towards their full apprenticeship. They already learned some skills and mastered them, so they don't need to retake those courses once they get into the full apprenticeship. And so I think there's some different things that we can do. It'll be interesting to see learn more about your ideas and the occupations that you're thinking about. I think Lexi has it on her radar to reach out to you, and would be happy to talk that through with you a little bit more.
Hey, Melissa, may I say something about this?
Sure.
I was talking about one of the challenges that organizations have is how do they actually put the apprenticeship inside the organization. So one of the scenarios is if you have like 5 roles that are approved, that these are the 5 roles that you have there, and somebody goes away, do you want to bring in an apprentice for that one of those 5 approved roles? And a lot of organizations, at least in the IT world, will go, well, no, I'd rather have somebody that actually can come in and do the work immediately. But then some organizations, instead of counting those 5 roles, they have a different way of saying, we'll have 2 apprenticeship roles with the idea that they're being developed for one of those 5 roles, kind of like what you just described. And in that scenario, we understand that happens. Two of the largest organizations that we started to work with from day one have 2 fundamental different ways of hiring. So one of them, every single one of the apprentices are in a contractor type role, because that's how they do their hiring. They actually go as a contractor until they have an actual opening come up. And the other one starts them on full salary from day one inside their training. So they're absolutely completely different ones, very large named organizations, but it's just fundamentally how that works. So you're not thinking about it wrong, but just kind of have to think about what the end result is when you come to it. That's what my recommendation would be.
Yeah, and honestly, we do see this with a lot of city and county type jobs, right? Because the budgets are governed by the councils or by the legislature, or, and what you have is what you have. And so you can only hire so many people. This is where some of the partnerships or grant funds can be useful. This is an area that the Rural Water Association of Utah has some experience in, and they're trying to help do some succession planning. But it's hard when you have one wastewater position, and you've had someone in that position for 20 years, but yet convincing the city, hey, I need extra funding to double fill this position, usually just does not happen. And so they've, done some creative things and looked at grants and ways to help offset those costs so that it will help them with that succession planning in those retirements. So we can connect you to them as well to see some of the things that they've done to work around that. And I see Pat put in the chat, we were right in line with the pre-apprenticeships, that we can use those to funnel individuals into the companies. And so glad we're on the same page there. Any other final thoughts or questions Any final words of wisdom? Lexi, Stacy, Steve?
I'll just say one thing. Part of our organization's funding comes from the Department of Labor. And as an intermediary, we are supposed to help organizations with apprenticeship, creating their own apprenticeships and the world around that. So feel free to reach out to us for conversation, information, and may not have anything to do with tech, but if you need help with that, we're another source. Not that we can beat Melissa, Alexia, or Pat in that, but we're also there and happy to help in anything that comes up that way.
Great. Well, again, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm happy to give you 10 minutes back of your day. Don't tell anyone you have 10 minutes to spare. But we do these webinars quarterly. And so if there's any others that you would like to invite or share this information with, we always post them online. And then once this recording is done, we will share it with you as well. Thanks, everyone.